Barriers to women in engineering. Is there a block from industry, or is it just the social implications? Hi, my name's McCulloch. I'm currently a Level 6 engineering student here at Newcastle College University Centre, and one of my main passions is diversity within the fields of engineering, especially seeing as I am a black female engineering student. The aims and objectives of this project was pretty simple. There is still a very noticeable lack of women within the engineering sector, and it was my main goal to find out why and if there was anything that could be done outside of current government initiatives. The main aim was to dissect exactly why women weren't entering the field and find out if it had a particular social impact or whether it was just the field itself. So for the methodology for this, I first completed some primary and secondary literature review to get a true grasp of what was already out there, what people were already saying, what people were already thinking, and what the experts in the subjects had to say on this. And then I went into my independent research. I published a questionnaire that in total I ended up with 57 respondents. And when I went through that, I then extracted the qualitative and quantitative data to find out where mine was lining up, where the statistics were lining up, and if they weren't, where that was an issue. So while reviewing the already available literature, I found a couple of main points. One, that at GCSE levels, engineering had the lowest amount of female participants, with only 1 in 10 entries into the engineering STEM subject being girls, despite the fact that overall in GCSE STEM subjects women do outperform. I also found that just 1 in 5 entrants into engineering and technology in universities from the semester 2018 to 2019 were female, despite the fact that in total they count 57% of the student population. This issue also extends outside of your schooling ages, so that 6 months after graduating, male engineering and technology graduates are more likely to go into work within an engineering-related field or role. So even when women are getting these qualifications, by the end of their degrees, they're not always using them. Sometimes they're going into different fields, or they just never return to the field of engineering. So I chose these 3 particular quotes from my research just because I think it shows very well that at all points of study, women are not picking up this subject, and I don't know there was much information on exactly why that was. I know that Google did research that 70% of women in high school that they interviewed said that it seemed like a male's job. But to me, that doesn't explain enough why we're not pushing children who are naturally talented towards this subject, into the subject, regardless of gender identity, or perceived gender stereotypes of the field. So this opened up very well into me creating my questionnaire and finding out exactly where this drop off of interest happened in women, which I will explain on the next page. So after gathering all of the information from the literature review, I then began compiling a questionnaire. This questionnaire only had 12 questions in. Half of them were multiple choice with then the option to expand. So the first thing I obviously did was break everything down into age brackets, and then I asked the question, okay, so how many of you people taking this have considered working in the field of engineering? To which 82.5% of women had said, never have I ever thought about working in engineering or wanted to. But further on, I did also ask, do you believe there was a way you could have been interested in working in the engineering field? In which 58.9% of those women who'd said they weren't interested believed that there could have been. So when I really dug through all of the research and started separating up the responses and looking for themes, I found that schooling, the social stigma, and the lack of education on the field were very prominent. I must point out that lack of education is not necessarily due to schooling. A lot of women I spoke to feel like even now there isn't particularly a large influx of information on how they would transfer the skills and qualifications they've already got into the field of engineering. as well as not some of them not find out about it at all till university level. So the schooling issue overwhelmingly lapped quite heavily with the social stigma. A lot of women in the 25 and up age category pointed out that they'd been told expressly in school that engineering was a job for boys. Women didn't take engineering, women took cookery or textiles, or you were pushed towards the more feminine believed sciences. And even with 18 to 25-year-olds, you found that social stigma was still there, but more prevalently in the 18 to 25 category. It was the school didn't offer engineering. The school encouraged them to go for things that enjoyed versus things they were good at. One woman even spoke on the fact that she had all of the relevant A levels to be an engineering student, but was never told that she could do engineering with them. You also then have to face the fact that a lot of people believe that because engineering wasn't a lesson within their school never touched on the subject. And a final point that was very interesting in regards to the lack of education and schooling and social stigma was when people would come in to do school talks in the few schools that did acknowledge the field of engineering as a viable career for women, those talks were held by men, and that almost alienated some of the female students, especially some of the ones I spoke to, who said didn't really motivate them, because having somebody stood told you why there needs to be more women in engineering when they're not a woman seems almost insincere. So the personal research basically showed that all three of these areas need to be tackled at once before there will be progress in the field. So in conclusion, most research, including my own, strongly points to the gender stereotype aspects of the field as still being an issue. Obviously, all of the information that was collected through my questionnaire would classify as anecdotal. These women are not currently in school. But with the youngest participants in my questionnaire being 18, they're also only just out of school. So it tracks to believe that some of their beliefs are still very viable. It also pointed out that the notion that in most instances, the women I spoke to didn't believe education even gave them the option to enter engineering. Whether it was not being told about the mass amounts of fields of engineering, and whether or not it is a case of they didn't learn engineering so nobody really knew, or whether or not it was just the case of, well, engineering is for boys. But one thing that it strongly points to is the current government and initiatives in place are not enough. Not on their own. There is a massive social movement behind the viewpoint of the field of engineering that I don't believe you can just teach out of these women in school. And I think that the reason the initiative's increase is showing so slow is in fact because there needs to be more work done on a social basis of women in engineering speaking out, of men in engineering, or anybody of any gender speaking out on why the field is actually a gender diverse, gender safe field that is a great place to work. So when reflecting on the project, I do think that the existing research did give me a very comprehensive look into the reasons that the gender gap exists, as well as the follow-up research that I did personally. But I think in the future I'd probably try and capture an even larger selection of women, as well as having a separate section of women who specifically work in the field to look into why they work in the field, why they don't believe that all of these things were an issue, or maybe if they do believe it was an issue, but that passion was overwhelming. I think it would be a very interesting contrast to go forward in the future and compare the views and the experiences of women who don't work in the field to women who do, because I have a feeling that you'd find that they weren't all that different. But I think that would be a moving forward, maybe as a follow-up type of research. I think the research that I did for this particular instance was very important to me, and I don't think I would have changed it. So, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to listen to this presentation. I hope you found it interesting or insightful, and once again, thank you for your time.